So if you're a New York sports fan, you could be in for a really long football season because I think the Giants and the Jets both stink. But the good news is Knicks basketball right around the corner with NBA training camp starting September 28th, regular season starting in mid-October. So if you want the best Knicks coverage right here on YouTube, the solution is very simple. Hit that red subscribe button down below to support the fastest growing Knicks channel right here on YouTube. You're watching New York Knicks Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Senior. Coming up on today's show, we're going to explore some John Wall rumors. Could he go to the Knicks via a trade, maybe in free agency, if him and the Houston Rockets agreed to a buyout, allowing him to become a free agent? And this all stems from previous reporting, which has indicated the New York Knicks' interest in John Wall going back a couple months ago. So basically, this isn't a contentious relationship between Wall and the Houston Rockets. They got together last week and they realized, okay, it's probably not in the organization's best plans to continue moving forward with John Wall after we had drafted Jalen Green to be our franchise superstar, and it's not the best move for John Wall to continue on with the Houston Rockets because he still has some good years left. Here's the problem with John Wall, though. He is still very, very expensive. I think it's one of the worst contracts across the entire NBA. Base salary the next 2 years of $91.7 million combined. And the Knicks really just cannot afford John Wall's contract. Now, I mentioned that previous reporting that had indicated the Knicks' interest with Leon Rose and this organization in John Wall. Let's take a look at that and take a look at the verbiage from a couple months ago. This coming from an NBA executive who spoke with NBA Analysis, saying the Knicks have some level of interest in John Wall. Houston would love to move him and get something of value for him. He isn't a long-term fit for the Rockets, and if New York really wants him, they have the pieces to get a deal done. Wall isn't their top priority this offseason, but he could be an excellent fallback option, and the interest is there. NBA Analysis reporting this on Wall a little while ago. At 30 years of age, there is no question that Wall would like the opportunity to play for a contender. The Knicks surprisingly became a contender in the Eastern Conference this year. Acquiring a talent like Wall could take them further into the playoffs than the first round, which is where they ended this season at the hands of the Atlanta Hawks. Lastly, granted the Knicks are not going to give up major value to get a deal done. However, they could offer a package built around Kevin Knox and a draft pick. They have the money to bring Wall on board too, should they look to do so. If I'm Leon Rose and I'm looking at the current roster construction for New York, I think they're in pretty good shape. Now, would I give up Kevin Knox and maybe a future pick in the second round for a guy like John Wall? I would certainly think about that. You know what I'm not doing? I'm not giving up any major assets for a player who is older, has dealt with injury issues. His play has declined at least a little bit because of those aforementioned injury issues, and he is extremely expensive. Now, that reporting came before NBA free agency when the Knicks basically had the Brinks truck loaded with cash to spend in free agency, and they didn't spend all of it, so there is still some cap room left. But this is what I'm not doing, and I want to harp on this. No major assets in return for John Wall. I'm just not doing it because I think that would hinder our franchise, and the Knicks are in a very good position moving forward. So I let my feelings be known. New York, the great city, now it's your opportunity to let your feelings be known on this subject matter. Do you want the Knicks to go after John Wall? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Be sure to get those votes in. Before we explore this further, you want to lay some lettuce down on some football games, maybe some NBA future bets? You can do so thanks to our sportsbook partner, BetUS, the presenting sponsor for today's show. Here's the deal. You go to chatsports.com/bet and you enter the promo code CHAT125. You get a 125% deposit bonus, meaning if you put $100 into your account, you get $125 of additional money back. That's $225 in total. There's not a better deal from any sportsbook out there, and this deal applies for anybody across the United States, regardless of if sports betting is legal in your state. I really like the New York Knicks over for their win total going into 2021-2022. I think this team could be a 50-win team, but Vegas and the odds makers have set their over-under 4 wins at 42.5. I think that's really low. The money line value there at -115, so you get some decent value there as well. Once again, you want to put some money down on the Knicks to win more than 42 and a half games, 43 and up, you get your money back plus. Go to chatsports.com/bet, enter the promo code CHAT125. Who is John Wall as a player? Let's get into that next here on New York Knicks Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Sr. Last year, I thought he rebounded very well coming off that Achilles injury and a couple of other injury issues that had surfaced. My problem with John Wall, though, really throughout his NBA career, is that he's not the most consistent or efficient offensive player. So while he'll give you a bunch of highlight reel plays because he's uber athletic, he's fast, he's bouncy, he's kind of like a Russell Westbrook light, the shooting percentage and the three-point percentage have never been there for John Wall. And I think for the Knicks, they kind of need that from the guard spot because they do have a couple of spotty shooters on this roster. I was impressed with how John Wall played as one of the go-to options offensively for the Rockets last year. And his numbers last year were really better than that stretch for a decade after he got selected number 1 overall by the Washington Wizards coming out of Kentucky. And there was certainly some playoff success there alongside Bradley Beal. Those decade-long averages were pretty legit. You look at the straight-up numbers and you're like, okay, John Wall, 20 points per game, 9 rebounds. The numbers last year were somewhat similar as well. But again, you look at the field goal percentage and the three-point percentage, 43%, 32% for a guard with the ball in his hands all the time. The numbers are just a little bit too spotty for me. So I really don't know, and I don't think, frankly, that the New York Knicks, after the moves that they made in NBA free agency, need to give up any assets for a player like John Wall. Now, if Houston's like, hey, I want Kevin Knox back and maybe a second-round pick, I'm doing the deal because I do think that John Wall at this point of his career, at 30 years old, approaching 31, is a dynamic player. I like to throw out that comparison to Russell Westbrook. I think Westbrook is a more well-rounded player. I like him better defensively. I think he's got a little bit of an edge on Wall in terms of his explosiveness. He hasn't dealt with the injury issues and the severity of those injuries that John Wall has, but John Wall is a dynamic player. I just don't think that the Knicks really need him because I think they have put together a solid and well-rounded, diverse, and deep roster going into this upcoming season because there are a bunch of options at the guard spot especially. And would John Wall like to come off the bench for New York? You take a look at the Knicks starting 5. I think this is what it's going to be under Tibbs. Kemba Walker at point. Maybe he's rejuvenated going back to his home city of New York because he grew up in the Bronx. Evan Fournier, maybe a slight overpay, but he can give you 16 to 20 points per night. R.J. Barrett took a massive jump from his rookie campaign to his sophomore season. I'm expecting yet another jump going into his third year. Last year, he averaged around 40% from deep. Julius Randle, most improved player. Mitchell Robinson on this roster fits in so nicely because all he has to do is protect the rim, run from baseline to baseline, block shots, rebound the basketball, and be an energetic presence. So I like the Knicks starting 5. Where would John Wall factor into this equation? Now, I understand the argument, yeah, maybe John Wall over Kemba Walker, but are they similar players at this juncture of their respective careers? Possibly. Grade John Wall as a player for me from 1 to 100. I know a lot of you like to play NBA 2K. A lot of you like to scout these players and prospects who are at the NBA and college level. Right now for John Wall, I think he's in the low 80s. I do, because of how he was able to show last year that when he's healthy, he can be a dynamic player who averages around 20 points and 7 to 9 assists per night. And if he is on the Knicks roster, there are other options around him where I think those assist numbers would about stay the same, but maybe the points per game does go down. If he hits the free agency market, he wants to play for a winning organization, and he wants to sign for cheap instead of that astronomically high salary, maybe I'd kick the tires. Another reminder, subscribe to New York Knicks Now by Chat Sports. We launched this channel a couple months ago. We've been growing like crazy, and with Knicks basketball right around the corner, this is going to be your go-to spot. So hit that red subscribe button down below. Let's continue to grow the Knicks family here at Chat Sports, and as always, thanks for watching.